icyo mbaza ni kimwe koko hari umuntu ugihagarara ku nyama muri iki gihe koko buretse nitaba umukiriya kiriya biteze
ariko tayi aho kusoreza imyenda wibereye kuri telefone kweli
ariko ni kuwa mbere nawe wagwa wamo uracyari wose icyo nakubwiraga wa muntu niko ye umuntu w'umugabo ku bukwe bwe akambara kositimu itukura iciye n'amaboko noneho none se uyisuza
si wombwiye ngo ngwe muse
ntabwo ari ibi navugaga
kuwa mbere kanda akanyenyeri 345 akanyenyeri 2 urwego maze nawe ugwemo. Wikwisondeka.
Hello, dear viewers. Time for the news here on RTV. Pardon me. My name is Serge Nore. I'll be sitting in for Martina Avera. As always, we'll begin with the headlines. President Paul Kagame has received the Vice President of the Transitional Sovereignty Council of the Republic of Sudan. The Women in Leadership Summit and Awards have been held here in Kigali. And on the international scene, political turmoil and ethnically targeted violence, are rising in South Sudan. Now the details, I'm glad you're able to join us. On Thursday at Village Rugwiro, President Paul Kagame received Malik Agar, the Vice President of the Transitional Sovereignty Council of the Republic of Sudan, who brought him a message from Lieutenant General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, Abderrahim al-Burhan, the President of the Transitional Sovereignty Council. Rwanda and the Republic of Sudan have had good bilateral relations for many years. This relationship is benchmarked by diplomatic representation in both countries since the opening of Rwanda's diplomatic mission in Sudan in 2006, and a reciprocal culture of relations. In a reciprocal culture of relations, the Republic of Sudan opened an embassy in Kigali in September 2011. Now, Rwanda, in collaboration with nearly 80 other countries that are part of the International Organization of French-speaking countries, La Francophonie, have celebrated the 55th anniversary of the establishment of the organization. We have the details with Enola Gladys Benimana.
During the celebration, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Rwandan Parliament emphasized that being a part of the French-speaking community is a significant step in fostering cooperation and international relations. The role of the French language in Rwanda's education system was highlighted, with the head of the Teacher Development Department in the Rwanda Basic Education Board also addressing the matter. French as a language is very important in both learning and teaching. The first thing is that all languages within our education system play a role in helping our students to acquire broad knowledge. A language also has an impact on international knowledge and culture, so there is much we learn through it. Clementine Mucheka, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, points out that the government of Rwanda continues to strengthen its partnership, particularly with the French Embassy, to enhance French language teaching programs, which play a key role in improving Rwanda's relations with other countries.
Au Rwanda, aujourd'hui, l'éducation est un pilier essentiel de notre développement.
In Rwanda today, education is a key pillar for our development, which is why the government of Rwanda works closely with the French Embassy on educational programs, strengthening efforts to improve both the teaching and learning of French. We train teachers who teach it, and we also teach both young and adult learners to read and write French, among other initiatives that will help us seize various opportunities for connecting with others.
C'est vraiment à s'ouvrir sur le monde.
The President of the Senate, Dr. Kalinda Francois-Xavier, also emphasized the importance of the French language in Rwanda's education system.
placé sous le thème inspirant.
Today we are presented with a theme that says, I learn, then I do something with it. It reminds us of the importance of education in building a society that is inclusive and resilient. We have heard the positive impacts of education from the discussion shared and in other areas, and it has contributed to fundamental rights.
Et bien plus qu'un droit fondamental.
The International Day of French-speaking countries was celebrated as Rwanda prepares to host the 46th meeting of the ministers of the countries in the French-speaking community OIF, which will be held in Kigali, Rwanda in November this year. Enora Gladys, RTV News.
Thank you, Enola. Now, women and girls involved in business, as well as those in higher education institutions and universities, gathered for discussions aimed at helping them share experiences and broaden their perspectives with the goal of preparing them to become future leaders. This took place during the Women in Leadership Summit, organized by the Lead Access organization. The participants shared their journeys and offered testimonies to inspire young women to be courageous and pursue their leadership ambitions.
But me being on the other side, presenting to the board, has helped me to try and be a better board member. So the most important thing is to prepare. Whatever you're presenting, be sure that you're an expert. You know what you're talking about. And when you do that, people tend to respect you. The challenges I've faced when, that personally, so I was the only woman, young, and you're presenting to mainly at the time, all the board members were men, so they tend to be condescending. Whatever you say, they interrupt. So, like what I did in my case, I actually refused to be interrupted. I said, with all due respect, if you allow me to finish what I'm presenting, then you can ask questions, then I'll respond. And so when it happened, there's one of the board members actually said, oh, because they knew me when I was employed and young, said, oh, but young girls. Mind you, I was a mother, I had 2 kids, and this man called me young girl. But I didn't get mad, because I've also learned in life that not all battles are necessary. You don't have to engage in all of them, but the right ones must be won. So be prepared, present what you understand, ask for respect. And when you're a woman, it's even more difficult, really. It's like you have to fight for your respect, which is not right. But what I've done, me presenting to the board, is being ready. When I know there's a board coming, I prepared. I was at a bank at the time. I was in the HR department, so I had to present the numbers, the turnovers, and everything. I had to say why this and that, and I made sure I had everything. So whatever they asked, I had an answer. But because they're board members, they take decisions. Sometimes they do not necessarily agree with my recommendations, but I just did my part. I presented and told them what it is, and just left the room and let them take decisions. So be prepared, but also be confident, But if you can't be confident if you don't know what you're talking about.
I've had a scenario where I was in a very difficult board because the board were technicians who did not see the bigger picture. And that's a very difficult board because all they care about is the numbers. They don't care about what you're building. It's a very tough board. And in that scenario, I'll be very transparent that I left that scenario because I felt like I'm setting myself up to fail. And I refused to continue. In my current situation, when I arrived, we had a board, I would say, that just did not reflect the work. It was basically not African when I arrived. And I think we've done a lot of work in the last 4 years to change the type of board. The board asked a very good question. I would say we have a very tough board, but in a good way. There are people on the board who are very precise. There are people on the board who are far-looking, understanding the vision. And for me, it's about getting the board to buy into the long-term vision. It's about getting the boards to trust you. And I think that is the same thing as being a leader anyways, as a CEO. You have to get your team to trust you. And for also, with sometimes showing some vulnerability. I'm somebody who just didn't believe in general that it was my duty to show you my vulnerabilities, whether you're the board or my staff. But I think with the board, I've taken the approach that sometimes I come to them and say, listen, this is a tough situation. There's a lot of things that have happened that have nothing to do, beyond our control. The geopolitical situation, the financial situation, but this is what, this is where I'm starting from, and this is what I think we should do. And getting them to also, sometimes I come to them when they come to me with tough questions and I say, what have you done to help us? Like, you're on this board. but, you know, how much have you raised? Because it seems like all the money that's here is me who's raised it, you know. And it's a bit of banter, but it's also to say that you have to find a way to make sure that they're also involved in it. So I just think that as a leader, you have to decide at which point is the board or the situation you're in just not viable and walk away. Like, I think I walked away from something I had built from scratch, and it took me a year. I grieved it for a year.
Iris Irumva, who is the CEO of Lead Access, also shared valuable insights with women and girls who aspire to become leaders in future.
There's one strategy I have: start, stop, continue. What do you need to start to get where you want? What do you need to continue that is working right now and that can get you to the next level? And what is not working that you need to stop immediately? And I've found that to be like the most incredible strategy that helps me all the time. But because I did not get here with only a strategy, but there are stories around all of us, because leadership isn't about waiting for permission. It's about taking space. It's about owning your voice. It's about creating opportunities, not just for yourself, but for women coming after you. Every story was a lesson, and every woman a force. And none of that would have been possible without the incredible support of some of our partners. I'd like to appreciate the team from AGRA and BPN who really supported to bring together these amazing workshops.
Moving on, in celebration of World Oral Health Day, the Rwanda Biomedical Center has emphasized that poor oral hygiene remains the leading cause of serious oral health issues, including tooth decay, gum disease, and oral cancer. Adam Squizera with more.
Some residents experiencing dental problems describe them as among the most painful health conditions they have ever endured. Tooth sensitivity can trigger headache and even make eating uncomfortable to the point of stopping altogether. Dr. Visma Nashel states that tooth decay and gum disease are the leading causes of dental issues. He also highlights the connection between the oral health and non-communicable diseases and other health complications.
Indwara zo mu kanwa ndetse zikunze no kwibanda ku bantu benshi zo gucukuka kw'amenyo bita dental caries.
Dental caries can contribute to heart disease because the bacteria responsible for tooth decay can enter the bloodstream and affect the heart's endocardium, potentially leading to infections. Similarly to poor oral health can complicate diabetes. Recent studies have also shown that periodontitis can cause serious complications, particularly for pregnant women. It has linked to an increased risk of premature birth and miscarriage. Dr. Danilo Milanes, Dean of School of Dentistry at the College of Medicine and Health Sciences at UR, urges people to prioritize their oral health and adopt proper hygiene practices.
Oral diseases are fitting into what we call non-communicable diseases, and it's the first non-communicable diseases affecting the country of Rwanda and also affecting the whole world. And the important issue is that it's totally preventable. We can prevent. What we are doing here today is we are raising awareness about oral diseases, and that is a very important aspect, because when we raise awareness on oral diseases in communities, schools, work centers where people are working, we are raising awareness, and that is very important, because as simple as brushing our teeth properly is a preventive method. Then we don't have to invest many resources in, let's say, getting a good oral health and a good oral cavity, without diseases. That is one point that we need to see, and we are also getting school initiative in order to transmit that message to the whole country, to the whole continent, because one of the main challenges we have, dentistry is a curative attention, very expensive, and we are trying to raise awareness in order to reduce the burden of diseases with less costs. Equitability, accessibility to resources, accessibility to dental services is one of the main problems we have in our continent, and that's why we are now here raising our voice in order to see the people all the oral diseases are preventable. We can prevent from the beginning. Then if we reduce the cost, we can use that money to do all the programs in the country, even all over the continent. That's why the global oral health and all the meetings we have, is time for action now.
RBC report that a 2022 study found that only 33% of people over the age of 18 brush their teeth properly after eating. Additionally, nearly 67% of the population suffers from gum disease.
Thank you, Adam Squizera, for that report. Now, farmers in Nyagatare district, that's in the eastern province, have expressed concern over their crops, particularly maize, failing to sprout due to prolonged drought in the area. They fear this may have severe consequences for their harvests. Agricultural authorities in the district have advised them to consider alternative short-cycle crops, such as beans, and have assured them of support in that transition. The prolonged drought has significantly affected sectors like Rukomo, Karangazi, and Wimiaga, among others. John Kayumba, the head of the Rwanda Agriculture and Animal Resources Development Board in Nyagatare district, has reassured the farmers, emphasizing that planting fast-growing crops like beans could help mitigate the impact. It is projected that more than 40,000 hectares of land will be cultivated across Nyagatare, including 15,500 hectares for maize and 22,400 hectares for beans. Over 60% of the land has already been planted. Now back here to Kigali, and Legal Aid Forum Rwanda is calling on governments, legal institutions and development partners to work together to ensure that, to ensure that legal aid is accessible, well-funded and supported by strong policies and laws. We have the details with William Evans Mutabazi.
The call was made during an annual policy dialogue on access to justice, gathering stakeholders from government, civil society, lawyers, legal aid clinics, and development partners to reflect on access to justice in Rwanda. These had this to say.
Such a dialogue is very important because legal aid is one of the pillars that allows the justice sector not to consider having justice for only the people that can afford to pay legal fees. So the Rwanda justice system and ourselves as a bar association cannot afford to build a bar association or a system where only the people that can afford legal fees have access to justice. Therefore, this kind of conversation is very important, and we look forward to the recommendations that we have considered, like, for instance, the issue of fundraising, the aspect of getting together in terms of coordination so that we can combine efforts, but also trying to reach out to as many people as we can because the need out there is overwhelming. We therefore think such a dialogue help us to get together, but also draw recommendations and actionable points that will allow us to get to deliver the justice and legal aid throughout the country.
I would think this was a kind that all actors were mainly in the house, and they assessed where we've come from, where we are, and where we need to go. So I would think it was something that was this dialogue was very much of importance, that he has showed us some of the loopholes that are still there, that we think we need to cap, but again, to appreciate the journey that we have thus far. A lot has happened, as I said. We can appreciate that at least we can have, like in the courts, we have legal aid where it's very much mandatory. For instance, in the Court of Appeal, in the Supreme Court, in juvenile cases, at least we don't miss legal aid. And we think also this will continue even at the lower bench where it's not mandatory, but definitely the litigants that may need legal aid that can have it. So this was a very nice dialogue that we think if it would happen every year, it would very much of help in terms of access to justice and legal aid.
I think as of now, the delivery mode you have in Rwanda is a mixture of many approaches, which is very good. So, for instance, we have state-sponsored legal aid through MAJ, through Abunzi, but we also have non-state like us, Legal Aid Forum, who are using different approaches. using ICT to provide legal aid, using paralegals. You talked about paralegals earlier. But I think what is lacking is that legal aid has no legal basis as we speak. We have fragmented provisions about legal aid to children, legal aid to transfer cases, those cases that have been transferred to Rwanda. I like that because that one has been, codified that anyone who is transferred to Rwanda, especially those who are accused of genocide-related cases, must receive legal aid at state expenses. And my question is, we need to do this for everyone. Whoever is financially vulnerable to secure a lawyer by themselves, because lawyers are very expensive. I'm sure you are aware that the minimum that lawyers can charge is 500. That is 400 USD. That's a lot of money for people who are surviving on less than $1. So I think we need codification, we need a law, a very specific law that spells out how legal aid is done. So far what we are seeing is interventions from Legal Aid Forum, Haguruka, Rwanda Women's Network, essentially legal aid service providers from non-state sector. But I think as a country we need a legal aid law, we need a legal aid fund, we need to, if due process is to be followed, if human rights are to be upheld, if the constitutional right that citizens have to be upheld, we need a proper legislation on how legal aid is provided. Because it's essential. It's not even a question of choice. It's a right. So what we are trying to do at the Legal Aid Forum, we also try to include university legal aid, students, law students, so that they understand the concept of social justice. Because when you are a student, you don't know finally where you end up. You may end up being in private practice. You may end up being corporate. You may end up being in-house lawyer. So we have started working with university legal aid clinics, who are also actually members of the Legal Aid Forum. So we are training them on legal aid, on ADR, criminal justice, all these important policies, NST1, so that we can, at least when they graduate, some of them can join private practice, some of them can be legal advisors, and this is what they do. So I think it's a concept we are trying to inculcate into our young and upcoming lawyers so that they understand. And that one, we are building a culture of pro bono, because in some countries pro bono is very important. It's very, and I think it's something we should capitalize on in the future when we don't have funding, because if you have lawyers, currently we have more than 1,300 lawyers. Imagine if all of those were providing legal aid. We wouldn't be talking about shortages.
So what should be done?
So education, legal education should streamline, should involve, should more focus on also what these students will be doing. But we should also embrace other approaches like paralegalism, which means you train a critical mass of population who know how to read and write, who can understand the basics of the law so that they can go out in the community. And it has worked.
The Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Justice, Mr. Mbonera Teofil, noted that such a forum is important for self-assessment.
This is a dialogue that actually helps us to assess ourselves when it comes, of course, to access to justice. It's a good dialogue. It happens each year, but it's really a very good one, because it helps us to see where are we coming from, and where are we heading, what are the challenges that we have so far, how to address them. I was amazed by actually the discussion that we have made today, because the discussions reminded us many aspects of issues that we really should focus on to ensure that legal aid is really advancing in our country in different areas. Legal aid is really something broad, and access to justice as well. But legal aid helps actually ensure that access to justice is really enshrined in our justice delivery. And with the today discussions, we did learn a lot when it comes of actually we learned a lot concerning actually the lacuna that we still have. Little means is still being experienced. We also have the issue of awareness, how to find such service, where to find it, what are the needed means just to access the service, and what are actually the strengths we have, but also the weaknesses that we have. For example, we were actually made aware that we still lack experience. We still lack actually sufficient knowledge for some, and for this we need to continue capacity building. Those are actually the discussions that were made.
Legal aid in Rwanda is guaranteed under various legal instruments, including the Rwandan Constitution, criminal and civil procedure laws, judicial organization laws, and the Rwanda Bar Association regulation. William Evans, RwandaTV News.
Ngewe icyo mbaza ni kimwe, koko hari umuntu ugihagarara ku nyama muri iki gihe koko? Uretse nitaba umukiriya. We kiriya biteze.
Ariko tayo aho gusoreza imyenda wibereye kuri telefone kweli.
Ariko ni kuwa mbere nawe wagwa. Wango uracyari wose. Icyo nakubwiraga wa muntu niko ye. Umuntu w'umugabo ku bukwe bwe akambara kositimu itukura iciye n'amaboko noneho. None se uyisuza?
Si wombwiye ngo ngwe muse.
Ntabwo ari ibi navugaga.
Kuwa mbere kanda akanyenyeri 345 akanyenyeri 2 urwego maze nawe ugwemo. Wikwisondeka.
Welcome back, and now a look at international news. Political turmoil and ethnically targeted violence are rising in South Sudan, with communities once living peacefully now divided. Despite efforts by local leaders to reduce tensions, politicians are accused of stoking conflict for power. Meanwhile, the government blames a UN arms embargo for delaying the implementation of the peace agreement in that country, leaving citizens desperate for safety. Al Jazeera with the details.
They say they were driving home from a funeral when they were ambushed. 9 members of this family were shot. Amin Charles says men in military uniforms sprayed their car with bullets. The medics at this hospital in the city of Yambio in the southwest of South Sudan make do with what's available. Most government workers haven't been paid for more than a year, including soldiers. Often hungry, they demand money or food at remote checkpoints. This time, Amin told us the attackers threatened to burn them alive in the car before taking all their possessions.
My father's sister died also in the shooting. We only noticed after. We were trying to get out of the car. Shot her in the head.
14 years of independence from Sudan and billions of dollars of oil revenue haven't improved most of South Sudan's roads, so we traveled to Western Equatoria by air. We found villages deserted, driving to the town of Nzara after recent killings of civilians on the road. 7 years after a peace deal ended a devastating civil war, political turmoil and violence are rising. All of these people have fled their homes since the war. Power sharing agreement has fueled competition for political positions. Hundreds of people have been killed near here in what people tell us were ethnically targeted attacks in communities that have lived together peacefully for generations. Many, like Grace Elizeo, say their attackers were unknown to them. She says they slit her husband's throat in front of her in their home last month. At meetings like this, some community leaders are doing their best to try and reduce the tensions and stop the violence. But many people here say at the same time, other politicians are deliberately stoking the tensions as they fight over power.
The UN helicopters flew to Nasser.
As the conflict escalates, President Salva Kiir said he's still committed to peace. In recent months, his government's detained and dismissed dozens of allies of his civil war rival, Vice President Riek Machar. One of them was Western Equatoria's governor. Government troops have been fighting his men in the countryside ever since. The 2018 agreement to unify militia in the National Army hasn't been fulfilled. The governor's deputy, an ally of President Kiir, has taken over. He's promising stability, but he told us the UN arms embargo is holding up the peace deal.
We need also this embargo to be removed so that we are able to buy some weapons, equip the unified forces, then the unified forces can be able now to provide the security.
Amin told us nobody in his family is interested in politics. He said they just want to be safe. Malcolm Webb, Al Jazeera, Western Equatoria, South Sudan.
That report has brought us to the end of this edition. However, before we go, let us again take a look at the headlines. President Paul Kagame has received Malik Agar, the Vice President of the Transitional Sovereignty Council of the Republic of Sudan. The Women in Leadership Summit and Awards have been held here in Kigali. And as we just saw, political and ethnically targeted violence are rising in South Sudan. That's the end of the news for now here on Rwanda Television, but not the end of the program, so stay with us. Be sure to join us on Friday with Olive Neti. Goodbye.